who's actually going to get the most out of a pre-built white gaming rig like this, and who should walk away before they click add to cart. If you're a casual streamer who just wants a solid 1440p experience without spending weekends tweaking BIOS, you might be in the sweet spot. If you're a competitive esports player chasing the highest frame rates on ultra settings, or a budget-first buyer who's still hunting for sub-$1000 performance, you might be better off looking elsewhere. And yes, the price point matters a lot, so let's dig into whether the HELLOLAND white gaming PC delivers enough real-world value for a typical buyer. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, the biggest question on most people's mind is, do I even need a liquid-cooled desktop if I'm not planning to overclock? The answer is a mixed one. The 240mm radiator does keep the Ryzen 5 9600X and RTX 5060 comfortably in the safe zone for a few hours of continuous 1440p gaming, but you'll rarely notice the difference unless you're pushing the CPU past stock speeds. For a seasoned 4K gamer who mostly plays titles like Valorant, Elden Ring, or Apex Legends at medium-high settings, the cooling is more about noise reduction than performance gain. The fans spin quietly enough that they're barely audible during a match, which is a welcome perk for a bedroom setup with neighbors just across the hall. Now, let's talk about the core of the machine, the AMD Ryzen 5 9600X paired with an RTX 5060. This combination sits nicely in the mid-range tier. In practice, you'll see consistent 70-90 FPS in demanding 1440p titles when you dial the graphics down a notch, and you can push 1080p into the 120-144 FPS range with most settings maxed. That's more than enough for a 144Hz monitor, and it means you won't be hitting the dreaded drop below 60 FPS wall in most newer releases. However, if you're looking to max out ray tracing on Cyberpunk 2077 or run Microsoft Flight Simulator at ultra quality, the RTX 5060 will start to feel the strain. The card's 8GB of GDDR5 memory is generous for the current generation, but the 128-bit bus does put a ceiling on bandwidth, so expect a dip when you enable the heaviest texture packs. Memory is where this PC shines. The 32GB of DDR5 running at 6000 MHz isn't just a brag-worthy spec, it translates into smoother multitasking when you have a game, a voiceover app, and a web browser all open at the same time. I tested the rig by streaming Fortnite while running Photoshop for overlay design, and there was zero hitch in the video feed, something that a 16GB stick would have struggled with, especially with the higher latency windows of older DDR4 kits. The 1TB NVMe SSD also feels snappy from the get-go. Game loads that used to take 2,530 seconds on a SATA drive drop to under 10 seconds, and the operating system boots in under a minute. That means less waiting and more playing, which is exactly what a plug-and-play buyer wants. A quick look at the aesthetics might be tempting, but the real test is how the design holds up in daily life. The all-white chassis is definitely eye-catching, and it fits well in a clean desk environment. However, the white finish can show fingerprints and dust more prominently than a darker case, so you'll need to grab a microfiber cloth now and then. The case's front panel is decent, but the airflow is a bit constrained because the design prioritizes looks over raw intake. In practice, the 240mm cooler compensates for that, but if you add extra drives or RGB strips, you might see a temperature creep after long gaming sessions. One hidden trade-off that many buyers overlook is the power supply. The unit ships with a 650W PSU, which is enough for the stock configuration, but it leaves little headroom for future upgrades. If you ever decide to swap the RTX 5060 for a higher-end RTX 4070 or add another GPU for compute work, you'll likely need to upgrade the power supply anyway. That's not a deal-breaker if you're comfortable staying in the current spec envelope, but it's something to keep in mind if you're planning a long-term upgrade path. Another practical consideration is the software side of things. The machine comes pre-installed with Windows 11, which is fine for most users, but the out-of-the-box experience includes a handful of manufacturer bloatware, mostly utilities for monitoring temperatures and managing Wi-Fi 6 connections. They're not intrusive, but they do add a few extra steps if you want a pristine OS installation. A quick cleanup using the built-in Windows Reset feature gets you a lean system in under 10 minutes, and the process is well documented on the HELLOLAND support site. So who should walk away? If you're a hardcore competitive gamer who needs the absolute highest frame rates, you'll probably want a custom-built rig with a higher-tier GPU and a more robust cooling solution that can handle overclocking. If you're a DIY enthusiast who enjoys tinkering with BIOS settings, swapping out parts, and watching the